The greatest thing about a power outage is that everything's reversed. I'm totally reversed. Everything's crooked. I'm here, you're here. We just look a little bit different tonight. I just really don't understand what's going on. Maybe I should give notes to Nancy Pelosi, because this is where you can change your hairstyle just by changing cameras and having a power outage. This is Evenings LALATE. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Evenings LALATE. As the helicopters are coming from above, as we certainly need someone to rescue us from what's going on tonight. With a power outage, helicopters, change cameras, different lenses, everything is absolutely wonderfully different tonight, and let's just hope it never happens again. I appreciate you for coming in tonight. So go to the front channel, subscribe. I don't know which finger I should be using, so, this looks like my middle finger. I apologize. It's one of those nights. This is going to be a very enjoyable video because everything is going to be totally unpredictable because I just don't know what it looks like. Also, like this video if you could figure out that was my thought. In tonight's Evenings LALATE, you understand the wonders of a power outage when everything is so totally screwy. Cameras are no longer the same cameras, different lenses, everything is totally different. But I'm here, you're here. And ultimately, it's ironic and sort of symbolic because there's a push underway to change everything with the second stimulus package. In this video, I'll be going over the push to get MSC, multiple stimulus checks, the push to get hazard pay back in the second stimulus package, the push to get EIDL grants and EIDL loans, and the push to get this to the finish line. A lot of movement in recent days, but as Purple Power has really understood, senators have understood, there's a need to get a bigger stimulus package because time has elapsed. In this video, I'll be going over that and more. All right, let's get to the breaking news. The breaking news is that the Purple Power is aligned for MSC, and now congressional leaders are as well. What is an MSC? How does it work? Why is it warranted? And how much should it be? An MSC is multiple stimulus checks. How much is it? They're generally perceived to be $2,000 per month. How many months? At least 6 months. The minimum would be 6 months, $2,000 checks, or until the pandemic improves or until unemployment goes down. And why is this suddenly becoming an issue now here in October? It's because it's taken too long. As we sit here today in mid-October, we're looking at a second stimulus package, understanding that a third stimulus package was supposed to go to writing and approval in just a few weeks, and we're still on the second one. It ain't gonna cut it. It don't matter if it's President Trump or President Biden. You need 2 stimulus packages this winter. And this was before the new news today, that COVID-19 cases are at the worst level today, new COVID-19 cases since July. How does multiple stimulus checks work? It would work with a single bill that calls for multiple stimulus checks. It wouldn't be consecutive bills. Now, this is where you need the focus. The focus is that the second stimulus package, as written now, calls for a second stimulus check, and just one. But it's not sufficient. In fact, why do we know it's not sufficient? Because we were told in March it's not sufficient. Let's go back. Back in March, the original CARES Act for the first stimulus package was to address a national lockdown looming that we knew was going to be 3 months. It was going to be March, April, May. The original CARES Act said that multiple stimulus check, a check for every month, for March, April, May, was owed and due because Americans were going to be on lockdown. They weren't going to be working. They'd have no money. Well, when the final version of that bill went to drafting, and it went to the Temple of Doom, they said, you know what, we'll take out the multiple stimulus checks, we'll just do one, and we'll get to the other 2 when we need, in a couple of weeks, we'll get to it. And you know what, we'll put in FPUC and we'll have it expire on our vacation, and we'll get to it before we go on vacation, we promise. We're going on vacation in July, so it's going to expire while we're on vacation, we'll get to it later. Well, what happened thereafter was a second and third stimulus package, which is often never referred to as second and third stimulus package. That was for another round of PPP for big business, and then another round of big business PPP. But when your second stimulus package, this one, came to writing in May, thousands and thousands of people said that's not enough. What happened to the multiple stimulus checks? By May, people were wondering, where was my check for April? Where was my check for May? And the second stimulus package, written by the Democrats, written by the Temple of Doom, introduced to the House, said, you know what? Here we are. We have a stimulus package, $3.4 trillion. How much of the $3.4 trillion is for stimulus checks? Well, about $250 billion, about 8% of the bill. Don't tell anyone, but it's only 8% of the bill. And we're only going to give you one stimulus check. One stimulus check. Immediately in May, understand May, only 2 months into this pandemic, only 60 days into this pandemic, other Democrats said, that doesn't work, folks. That doesn't work. Where was the stimulus check for April? And who was the most vocal? And who was the most detailed? And who gave the most economic analysis at the time? Senator Harris. Senator Harris appeared across broadcast news for several days, including MSNBC's Chris Hayes, and said, you know what? There's this talk about a second stimulus package, the one that ultimately became the HEROES Act, and they want to do a $1,200 stimulus check. That doesn't work because $1,200 doesn't cut it for 1 month. $2,000 is better. It improves the situation, but you can't have one stimulus check. You need to have a stimulus check every month because people are in trouble. At the time, Harris said that 30% of the Americans are facing eviction. What's important to understand is that she was saying in May that $1,200 is not going to cut it for 1 month. In May, she was saying that you need multiple stimulus checks. In May, she said you need at least 6 months of stimulus checks. A check every month of $2,000 for at least 6 months, or until unemployment goes down or until the pandemic decreases. Her co-author, Bernie Sanders. Her other co-author, Ed Mackey. All Democrats, all in the Senate. Well, that was May. Guess how long it's been since May? 6 months. Guess what is the situation today? Unemployment hasn't improved. It's at its worst level since the pandemic. It is still at 800,000 new unemployment claims per week. The pandemic has not improved. It is now its worst level since July. We're entering the third wave of the pandemic, which they're now fearing a lockdown and absolutely a surge to levels we have never seen before. So as we sit here today, we would have seen $2,000 every month for these 6 months, and we would be still seeing $2,000 going forward because unemployment and the pandemic has not improved. At the time, Senator Sanders and Senator Harris said it's absolutely illogical what is being proposed of a single $1,200 stimulus check. Well, guess what? Those comments were made in May when this pandemic was like this, 60 days old or 90 days old, and that America was not at the financial cliff, not falling over the financial cliff, and so people understood this was needed. When I came into the space and started recording second stimulus check videos around June, I talked about that bill. And universally, every viewer said, hey, that has to be done. That has to be done. Well, now as we sit here in October, who's talking about multiple stimulus checks? First, Peter DeFazio, Democrat, House member, Oregon, says $1,200 for a single stimulus check for senior citizens who have endured this pandemic since the spring doesn't cut it. $1,200 is nothing. Second, every single viewer of this channel on a regular basis says $1,200 doesn't cut it. It doesn't pay for anything. It barely pays for my rent for 1 month. What are you doing? You're giving me a single check in the month of November for what I've endured since April? That's a joke. And that's for people who get a full stimulus check. Let's understand this. The Temple of Doom currently is not wanting to even give you a full stimulus check. She wants to give people on SSDI, SSI, Social Security, railroad benefits who are dependent on someone else's tax return a $500 second stimulus check to cover you from the month of April to the month of November. Can you say that with a straight face? I can't. It's a joke. It really is a joke. So as we sit here today, Purple Power, hashtag MSC. It's really great news because the movement is on to get a bigger table from Ethan Allen because everything's on the table. What do I mean? Well, this is the incredible great news as we sit here at the 9-minute mark. Stay with me because I'm going to talk about hazard pay and I'm going to talk about bigger FPUC. Bigger things are coming on this table, all because of this channel. What's happening now is that people from all different walks of life are saying, hey, this has gone on too long. You drag this on longer, we need bigger stimulus. And bigger stimulus means more stimulus checks. And you have airlines asking for $20 billion. You have hospitality asking for $20 billion. Well, we're now asking for multiple stimulus checks because we can't cut it with a single stimulus check. And that's the purpose of MSC. Problem solvers saw this as a problem. But everyone ignored them. They said, you know what, we need another stimulus check in March, but that's not enough, a check in March. So problem solvers, you want to give us 2 checks to cover us for 12 months? From March to March, you want to give us 2 checks? No. Senator Sanders, Senator Harris said, no. That doesn't cut it. $2,400 to cover people over 12 months? That's not even what Senator Harris and Sanders proposed for a month and a half. Of course, Temple of Doom is getting you on a path to nowhere. When she was talking about a $3.4 trillion bill before the $2.2 trillion bill, she did not have multiple stimulus checks. In fact, she's never given you multiple stimulus checks. Now, the Trump administration and Steve Mnuchin want to give you multiple stimulus checks, but they want to do it with different bills and go negotiate. Let's go back and chat for a few more months. No. What's problematic here with these politicians is that they move slow. They don't do things on the come, and they wait to do things after the fact. We're not doing that anymore, folks. No. We've been lied to, played with, and waited too much for things to be taken care of that were supposed to be taken care of months ago. That brings me to FPUC. If you watch that Chris Hayes interview from May, it's just like the Twilight Zone, because in it, he says, wait a second, FPUC is about to expire. It's about to expire in July. This is an interview in May, remember. It's about to expire in July, and no one's rushing to extend FPUC. What's wrong with these people? It's about to expire. And he actually says, we're heading to a financial cliff, we're going over the financial cliff, and there's no FPUC on the books to be extended. Well, that was May. It expired. And guess what? It hasn't been renewed. There's no sense of urgency to renew it. We're over the financial cliff. We've crashed. And yet, we're sitting here wondering, okay, where's the relief? So as you sit here today, one of the big things with FPUC that I'm deeply concerned about, and this is a second push for the Purple Power, is that FPUC absolutely categorically is going to get tarred and feathered by the Temple of Doom. I can just predict it for you. My prediction is that when you see Pelosi try to get this to a bill, whenever it does, the retroactive date is not going to be the retroactive date it's going to be. Because retroactive should be to the date at which FPUC expired, which is late July. Do you really think that if Pelosi's bill gets to a vote in February of next year, that she's going to do retroactive to FPUC to late July? Of course not. Of course not. She's going to do FPUC retroactive to January or, December. We're going to go back 3 weeks. She's not going to go back 20-something weeks. She's just not. This is how it ultimately turns into a farce that there's a big bill coming. No, it's a big bill for salary raises, not a big bill for you. And so the great news as we sit here tonight is that there's a push to get this to the finish line. There's a push to get a refocus, to say, hey, we have waited too long. One stimulus check is not going to work. And hence comes executive orders. When you tune into the video right after this, Purple Power, I'm going to be going over why Purple Power needs to focus on the president doing executive orders for multiple stimulus checks, because 1, you're entitled to it, 2, you need it, 3, you've been waiting for it, and 4, it would give him the presidency win. I'm not going to go too much into that right now, but I will say the incredible great news is that there's $800 billion unaccounted for that needs to be repurposed, that's sitting around. Well, guess what you can do with $800 billion? A stimulus check round costs about $300 billion-ish if it's $2,000 checks. Well, you can do the math. That's 2.5 rounds of stimulus checks. That $300 billion should be thrown into the $2 trillion. It should be brought to 2.3, or it should be brought to 2.4, hence 3 stimulus checks right now. That's why people just don't understand what's going on, and that's why Purple Power has been so successful. That together we understand how to get to the finish line, we understand where the money is needed, and how we get to that focus. Next, hazard pay. I promised you I was going to go over hazard pay. Hazard pay is back on, baby. It's back on. Because it was taken out, put in, taken out, put out, and well, guess what? We're not going to demand it taken out. We're not going to stand for it taken out. The current version of the Temple Doom takes out hazard pay. What she did was she raised salary raises for federal employees to take out your hazard pay. I can't even say that with a straight face. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. $10,000 you're entitled to if you worked as a frontline worker. And guess what? She evokes the notion and the mention of hazard pay frontline workers in nearly every press release. Heroes, frontline workers, essential workers. I'm like, seriously, you've taken them out. Seriously, you've taken them out. The net result is hazard pay needs to go back in. Hazard pay belongs back in. And ultimately what you need to see is $10,000 in your pocket. That's if you worked as a frontline worker during this pandemic, $13 an hour all the way up to the present. If you worked in the present during the pandemic and made less than $100,000 last year, you get a $10,000 right in your pocket. If you made over $100,000 last year, $5,000 in your pocket. Ultimately, what's important to understand is that this money is money for you, and that if you don't get this money, what do they expect you to do in the fall? As hazard pay kicks in and heats up, ultimately what will happen is people may not show up to work. Services may not be rendered. It's not only important that you get the money, it's also important that you get the money so that others like you continue to work as the ravaging of the virus grows in the winter months. A lot of twists and turns and a lot of big developments. So go to the front channel, subscribe. Subscribe because we're trying to reach 200,000 subscribers. Also, like 300,000 subscribers, sorry. Also, like this video. Coming up next is Purple Power. And there might be some power outage restored. So maybe we're back to looking normal on camera. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and stay with LA for more.